Oh, cool. Camp book. All the Goosebumps books I've read so far that take place at summer camp have turned out surprisingly good. So let's get my hopes up for this one. Though the title this time around couldn't be any more generic. Ghost Camp? That feels like a placeholder title. A major downgrade from things like Welcome to Camp Nightmare or The Horror of Camp Jelly Jam. It's Ghost Camp. It's a camp of ghosts. Deal with it. Our protagonists this time around are Harry and Alex Altman, two brothers on their way to Camp Spirit Moon. They're the only two kids on the bus. It's actually the middle of the summer, and the parents messed up signing the kids up for the camps they wanted. But Mom and Dad were so desperate to get the kids out of the house for a few months so that they can have the ever-rare kitchen sex, that they signed their sons up for the only camp that took mid-season admissions. Harry, our narrator, doesn't have much of a personality, but he never passes up an opportunity to mention that Alex has a beautiful singing voice, like a chorus of angels. Yeah, I know it's a setup, but it's a weird thing for Harry to be so hyper-focused on. The bus drops the kids off at the camp, but as they enter the facility, they find it's completely empty, quiet, abandoned. The brothers get worried until a camp counselor named Chris seems to pop out of nowhere. "They all left," Chris replied. He shook his head sadly. When he turned back to Alex and me, I saw the frightened expression on his face. "The three of us, we're all alone out here," he said in a trembling voice. A smile spread over Chris's freckled face. Then he burst out laughing. "Sorry guys, I can't keep a straight face." He put his arms around our shoulders and led us toward the camp. "I'm just joking." "Excuse me? That was a joke?" I demanded. I was feeling very confused. "It's a Camp Spirit Moon joke," Chris explained, still grinning. "We play it on all the new campers." Ah, great. I mean, the default reality of every Goosebumps book is that everyone is always pulling dumb scare pranks 24/7. R.L. Stine just seems to think that that's the human race's main form of communication. But these dumb scare pranks being formalized as a camp tradition really got my eyes rolling. We'll see how this plays out. The two boys meet the camp leader, Uncle Marv, a large, boisterous Jack Black type. They're taught the camp salute, which involves crying out, "Yo, spirits!" Yeah, I get it. And they're shown to their cabin, where Harry discovers a mysterious puddle of freezing blue ooze. That night, all the campers gather around the campfire for a big welcoming ceremony for the two newcomers, with fire-cooked hot dogs and ghost stories. We're introduced to a lot of kids in this camp, but for our purposes, we only need to know two of them. First, there's Elvis, who, despite his namesake, totally sucks at singing, so he comically gets buddied up with Alex. Harry, in turn, makes friends with Lucy, a nice but slightly mysterious girl with pale skin and raven black hair. They hit it off, but as they're talking, Harry's hot dog falls into the fire, and without hesitation, Lucy reaches into the flames to grab it. I jumped to my feet. "Your hand!" I shrieked. Yellow flames leaped over her hand and up her arm. She handed me the hot dog. "Here," she said calmly. "But your hand!" I cried again. The flames slowly burned low on her skin. She glanced down at her hand, confused, as if she didn't know why I was in such a panic. "Oh, hey!" she finally cried. Her dark eyes grew wide. "Ow, that was hot!" she exclaimed. She shook her hand hard, shook it until the flames went out. Despite the fire, Lucy isn't hurt. Harry is confused and shaken, but there's no time to dwell. Instead, it's time for spooky campfire stories. Uncle Marv tells two of them, and they take up a solid chunk of the book, so much so that I started to think that maybe this was a stealth short story anthology. The first story is about a group of campers settling down in the woods, only to discover that they're on top of a giant monster, its massive heartbeat reverberating through the ground. Ka-thump, ka-thump. They tried to ignore the sound, but it was so close, and such a strange but familiar sound. What could it be, the campers wondered. What on earth makes a sound like that? Ka-thump, ka-thump. The campers couldn't sleep. The noise was too loud, too frightening, too near. Ka-thump, ka-thump. They burrowed deep into their sleeping bags. They zipped themselves in tight. They covered their ears. Ka-thump, ka-thump. It didn't help. they couldn't escape the sound. Oh, no way! No way! How dare you, Stein? 45 books in, and you have the gall to now use things like rhythm and style. This bit is good children's horror writing. What the hell? It feels like a piece from Stories to Tell in the Dark. I mean, I get what's going on. This is an in-universe campfire story, so it's told in that sing-songy way most campfire stories go, but it betrays Stein by showing that he knows what interesting horror writing looks like. He just refuses to be interesting. That, or one of the many ghostwriters that Stein continues to deny existed, but totally existed, snuck something past the style guidelines. The second story is shorter and more simple. A dark, mysterious fog rolls over the camp, and when it blows away, everyone, the campers, the staff, they've all died and become ghosts, bound to never leave this patch of land. As Uncle Marv is telling the story, a mysterious dark fog rolls in and royally creeps the boys out. Yeah, it's not subtle. We just got some backstory. Eventually, Harry and Alex calm down. And as the days go on, they start to relax and enjoy the various activities like sports and the talent show. However, these moments keep getting punctuated with oddities. More of those blue puddles show up. Harry thinks he sees one of the campers floating for a second. And then things get more threatening. So let's go back to that dumb scare prank thing. Despite Spirit Moon more or less advertising itself as dumb scare prank camp, there's actually only one moment that I would say qualifies as a classic Goosebumps dumb scare prank. Harry and Alex go walking in the woods and a couple of campers make scary animal noises from the bushes. Ooh, we gotcha! In the place of the usual dumb scare pranks, we have scenes like Lucy's hand in the fire, campers receiving grave bodily harm and just shrugging it off, revealing no damage on their persons where there should obviously be some. Harry sees a camper stick a tent pole through his foot, but then the guy is fine. Alex sees a drowned girl at the bottom of a lake, but when he pulls her up, she just wakes up, laughs, and swims away. One of their bunkmates sticks a fork into his neck and then just says it was some kind of trick. These aren't classic Goosebumps dumb scare pranks. These are shocking acts of violence. And then a girl gets her head knocked clean off during a nighttime soccer game. When she stands up, head intact, both Harry and Alex are convinced they're in serious trouble. That night, Lucy pulls Harry aside and tells him what's going on. Yes, she's a ghost. Everyone in the camp besides Harry and Alex are ghosts. They died because of a mysterious dark fog. They can manifest themselves, and when they do, they leave behind that blue goo. Here, Stein confuses the terms protoplasm and ectoplasm. However, none of the ghost campers can leave the grounds. They are bound to this area of woods by some unknown force. The only way out? If they possess a living person and walk out in their body. Lucy asks nicely. Harry says no, so Lucy tries to take it by force. It's pretty distressing. This is a distressing book. I turned and tried to run, but something held me back. The fog. It tightened around me. The thick, wet mist. A choking mist. It drew around me, pushing me, holding me in place. I tried to scream for help, but the fog muffled my cry. Lucy vanished behind the black fog, and then I felt something cold on top of my head. My hair tingled. I reached up with both hands and felt ice, as if frost had settled over my hair. "No!" I screamed. "Lucy, no!" The cold sank down. My scalp itched. My face froze. I rubbed my cheeks. Numb. Cold and numb. "Lucy, please!" I begged. I could feel her. So light, so cold, settling into my body, sinking into my brain. I could feel her, and I could feel myself slipping away. Slipping. Yeah, wow, that's actually really intense for a Goosebumps book. Remember when kids were getting turned into rabbits after eating magic carrots? Through sheer force of will, Harry manages to fight Lucy off and escape. He runs back to the cabin, where he learns that Alex was just given the same info dump from Elvis. The two brothers make a run for it into the dark, but then they start hearing a massive heartbeat sound from under the ground. It's the monster from the first Campfire story. It grabs the two kids and starts to swallow them whole. Very Vor, much meme. But Harry gets it into his head that if they declare they don't believe in the monster, it'll go away. And that works. The monster vanishes. This I don't believe in monsters idea comes out of nowhere, by the way. There's no setup that suggests, oh, the horrors of the camp are fueled by your fears or whatever. To get into the rewrite a little early, this whole bit with the monster is a weird time waster, and it should be cut when Scholastic gives me the reins to remake the entire series. Anywho, all the ghosts in the camp show up and surround the brothers. Turns out they made the illusion of this monster for reasons? I guess just to stop the kids? Anyway, it's time for some possession. But then all the ghosts start fighting over who should take over the boys. And in fact, they get so violent with each other that they tear apart their own corporeal forms, returning to barely visible mist and disappearing. The brothers take this opportunity to run, getting back to the road that they can follow to a town or something. And then Alex starts singing. And his singing sucks, because he's actually been possessed by Elvis. The end. Well, good news, we're 3 for 3 with the camp books, because I quite like this one. It's a good children's horror book, but also, it's kind of a bad Goosebumps book. What surprised me about the camp book phenomenon is that I've liked these books for largely different reasons. Welcome to Camp Nightmare didn't have exceptional scares, but it did have one of the most heroic and likable protagonists in the entire series, and a book-ending twist that would make Rod Serling proud. The horror of Camp Jelly Jam was the nearest Goosebumps has gotten to Lovecraft, with its unfathomable monsters worshipped by over-the-top cults. Both of those books were effective, but they were also pretty silly. Ghost Camp, boring title aside, brings such a serious, threatening aura, and is uncharacteristically violent for this book series, to the point where I think it might require a disclaimer for those who find such content troubling. Oh, don't be so triggered, Greg, it's a horror book. No, that's the problem. This isn't a horror book. It's a Goosebumps book. You know, Goosebumps, a series of Jovial Stein's shitty joke books masquerading as a series of horror books. There's expectations with that, the same way there's expectations with, say, a Friday the 13th movie. You know what you're getting when you get a ticket for a Friday the 13th movie. You know how well you can handle that level of violence. When you get a Goosebumps book, you also know what you're getting. You're getting a living ventriloquist dummy making empty threats. You're getting lawn gnomes running around playing pranks. You're getting a giant mama worm trying to protect her worm babies. Do you know what you don't get from Goosebumps? A boy stabbing himself in the neck with a fork. A girl getting decapitated. Another boy impaling his foot with a pole. Another girl drowning herself. Another girl sticking her hand in a fire. Yes, they're ghosts, they don't actually get hurt, but it's still a realistic level of violence, and it's sadistic violence, because these ghosts are threatening our protagonists through self-harm. I don't think that's a taboo thing to portray in a children's horror book, but if there was one true positive element to the Goosebumps franchise, and I mean this with sincerity no matter how much I dislike these books, it's that Goosebumps allows certain young readers a space in horror who may otherwise not be able to handle more intense materials. I'm talking kids who are too afraid to ride the Haunted Mansion at Disneyland. Goosebumps is as scary as a front porch jack-o'-lantern, and sometimes that's the most a kid can handle. Just because you have a low tolerance for spicy food doesn't mean you should be barred from eating Thai. And that's why Ghost Camp is a good horror book, but kind of a bad Goosebumps book. It offers a level of intensity and spooky violence that readers acclimated to the series' norms will probably find shocking. I love R-rated horror. Hell yeah, let's make some pot brownies and marathon all the Saw movies. And even I found myself uncomfortable when a boy stabbed himself in the neck because I thought I was reading a Goosebumps book. Oh, okay, this scene has Lucy violating Harry when she tries to possess him. That's not very jovial Stein. So it's this weird out-of-step entry into the series, but again, on its own, solid children's horror. Not that it's perfect. The tense atmosphere makes up for a lot, but the methods and motivations of these ghostly campers are pretty unclear. Maybe it's because I recently watched Netflix's The Haunting of Bly Manor, a fantastic horror series about ghosts trapped on a plot of land who try to possess people in order to escape. It spends a lot of time going over the logistics of being a ghost and how possession works. And maybe I shouldn't compare that kind of world building to a Goosebumps book, but why didn't the ghosts just possess Harry and Alex right away? Like the second they stepped on camp grounds, sneak up on them, jump into their bodies, and jump back onto that bus. There's nothing in the text suggesting any kind of conditions to allow possession. Harry is barely able to resist Lucy's attempts at possession, and that's only because he had warning that that's what she was trying to do. What's stopping the ghosts from possessing the boys while they're asleep? And why are they even bothering with all these veiled threats of violence? I think a few more hard rules for these ghosts would have tightened up the stakes a bit. So for my rewrite, I would keep most of the same plot, but let's make some ghost rules. The ghosts of Camp Spirit Moon don't have the strength to possess a clear mind. Even if a ghost surprise attacks an unaware person, that person would be all, what the hell? And then have the mental strength to easily resist. In order to break down the mind's defenses, first the ghosts need to upset and confuse the person, heighten their emotions, diminish their reasoning, make them feel so unsafe and unsure of themselves that when a ghost gets its claws into that gray matter, the kids are too focused on their fight and flight to resist. You could do that by making illusions of monsters and dumb scare pranks, but the book is down with ghost self-harm, so let's just ride that as far as we can. Kids playing with knives, twisting their heads around in sports accidents, falling out of trees. Make Harry and Alex feel so unsafe that when a tiny voice in their head goes, "Hey, I can get you out of here, let me in, trust me," then the kids would be much more receptive to it, and therefore easier to possess. Which, when you think about it, is basically Pokemon logic. I'm gonna terrorize you until you're too weak to resist my capture of you. And that's all I would really change. Tighten up those ghost rules and ditch the monster stuff. Otherwise, again, it's a solid plot with some really unnerving scares. Also, watch The Haunting of Bly Manor. It's super good and very scary and has this gorgeous, if sad, queer love story in the center of it. Cannot recommend it enough. What was I? Oh, right, yeah. I give Ghost Camp an old but reliable microwave out of 10.